Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where today we are discussing Eddie Howe, we are discussing Newcastle, we're talking about how at the time of recording are they fourth in the Premier League. What is it that Eddie Howe has got this team doing which is making them so good this season? So as we briefly saw in the intro there, Newcastle United currently find themselves fourth in the table at the time of recording. That might have changed, I'm not too sure when this will be uploaded, but I think we would all say that is way ahead of what we were expecting them to achieve this season, basically. Coming into the season, we thought that Newcastle could maybe push and maybe start challenging for European spots. They have done more than that. At the moment, they look really good for a Champions League spot. Will it happen? Will they sustain it? I'm not too sure. But they are doing very, very well in the league. And you've got to say, Eddie Howe is working wonders with this starting 11. Now, that might come across as a little bit disrespectful to some of these players, but I think if you actually look at the team sheet, this is not a team of world beaters. I mean, Nick Pope's obviously a very good goalkeeper, Trippier's a great defender, Botman is a really promising young player, Guimaraes I think is one of the best midfielders in the world, but apart from that, you look at that squad, it doesn't look like a Champions League squad, let's be honest, okay? I'm not being harsh, Newcastle fans, but it doesn't look great, and that for me is exactly why Eddie Howe deserves so much credit. And even when you look at the underlying numbers, they aren't great. Newcastle defensively are good, yes, but they don't score the most goals in the league. Defensively, there are certain things where they only rank particularly high for pressing, which we will come on to later. The other aspects, they don't rank that well. And again, I think it's why Howe deserves so much credit. He has got this squad really united, really pulling on the same front, and then of course tactically, he also has them set up very, very nicely as well. So we will start with the in-possession stuff, because Newcastle have got to a point where they are better than most teams in the league, which means that they do have several games across the season where they have a decent amount of possession. And when trying to play out from the back, they shift to a 2-4 shape, with the two centre-backs dropping a little bit deeper, either side of Pope. Trippier pushes forward with Burn, and then Guimaraes and Longstaff at the moment, with current injuries, drop into form a midfield 2, whilst Willock pushes a little bit higher. And the plan here basically is to outnumber any opposition pressing system. And also what we can see is sometimes Longstaff will push a little bit higher, and Guimaraes can form a diamond round an opposition striker, with Guimaraes, Pope, Schär and Botman outnumbering the opposition striker, creating this 4 versus 1 shape and allowing Newcastle to play out from the back. As a result, Newcastle are very good at playing through the press. Like I said, Longstaff can help in these areas as well, and they're also helped by the fact that Guimaraes is very press resistant, he's very intelligent, his first touch is good, very good at turning away from players, keeping the ball for his side, and that means that Newcastle can build possession and play forward from there. From where I think we know their kind of general structure and approach, because it has been well covered this season because they are doing well. And from here they very much build with a back 3. Dan Burn will tuck in from left back. Of course, he is perhaps more naturally a centre-back, or he has been in the past, so it makes sense for him to tuck into this area. We then have Botman and Schär alongside him, and we see Trippier push higher. We then have Bruno Guimaraes and Longstaff playing as a double pivot. Almiron comes inside from the right-hand side, and it creates a 3-2-4-1 shape. Now, the most important thing to say about this Newcastle side is that the system isn't rigid. Players are given a bit of room for leeway. We can see Longstaff pushing forward, for example, in the Carabao Cup recently. Guimaraes is also given the licence to get forward. It's structured but also fluent in the way that players can interchange positions. But realistically, this is their general shape. Willock and Joel Linton have quite a nice understanding on the left-hand side. We can see Willock moving out here, and then Joel Linton comes inside. And the two of them, with their bundles of energy and physicality, are doing really well down this side of the pitch. But it's down the right-hand side where, for me, they're a little more impressive. But also, again, we have to talk about Bruno Guimaraes. This guy, I was saying it probably 15 months ago now. I done a video on why Manchester United and Arsenal should have been signing him at the time. When he first went through to Newcastle, I was shocked, because he's such a good player that, again, no disrespect to Newcastle, I couldn't believe that he'd gone to only Newcastle. But, wow, he has really led the evolution of this football club. Of course, alongside Eddie Howe and a new board, new owners, whatever. But Bruno Guimaraes on the pitch leads this team. This guy could play for pretty much any team in the world. I think at the moment he gets in any team in England apart from maybe Manchester City, because their midfielders are of course very good. However, this guy is super talented and also very committed. He seems to have fallen in love with the project at Newcastle, the Newcastle crowd, the area, everything about the Premier League, everything about Newcastle. He seems to have really fallen in love with it, and importantly, whilst he has all these technical capabilities, his passing, his dribbling, things like that, he's also got a brilliant work ethic as well. He's brilliant off the ball. And that, combined with the energy of players like Willock and Longstaff, the workman-like nature that this trio brings to the midfield, it's just super, super effective. They are so intense that teams can't really deal with them. And with this trio doing such a good job in the midfield, with Almiron also coming inside, it does give Kieran Trippier this room to get forward down the right-hand side. And Trippier is a key player for them. Yes, sometimes he'll drop deeper and play passes in behind the defence for someone like Almiron to run onto, or he'll go long over the top for Callum Wilson or Isak, but he's also given a licence to get forward into the final third as well, from where he can then put crosses into the box. And I think his FBref report kind of sums up the way that he's playing. So we can see, first of all, that top section, shot creating actions, the 99th percentile for fullbacks, which means the very top 1% for chance creation amongst fullbacks in the last year, which is how long he's been at Newcastle, combined with all fullbacks in Europe's top 5 leagues. That is super, super impressive. We can also see passes attempted in the 92nd percentile, which again kind of shows, one, the volume of football that Newcastle are having, but also how much trust they put in Trippier. We can see progressive passes, he's very key to getting the ball forward. But then if we look at pass completion, very low. And I think that's quite an interesting thing. They're kind of making the most of his passing ability. Kieran Trippier is a player who has every pass in the locker. So Newcastle make the most of that. They don't want to restrict him to short passing, so he is given a licence to lose the ball. They really trust him to bomb forward down this right-hand side, get into dangerous areas and make stuff happen. Yes, sometimes he will lose the ball, but their counter-press is very effective. They know that when he delivers well, it's right on the money, and this guy's performances all season long have been absolutely brilliant, and importantly, from a tactical point of view, they've also allowed Almiron to move inside. By Trippier moving forward down the side, Almiron gets into these areas, from where he, again, is another player that has massively exceeded expectations. Now, since the World Cup, his momentum has slowed down a little bit. It kind of came at a bad time for him, but before the World Cup, he was performing very well. And again, he's another player which brings bundles of energy to this team. And this is something that we are really talking about with this Newcastle side. I was talking about how they may not be the best collective, but Hal has got them all pulling in the same direction and putting in a real shift. However, for all this nice play on the ball, and genuinely they are a really good team to watch. I watched their Carabao Cup semi-final, second leg against Southampton, and they were absolutely brilliant. The first 15 minutes they played some of the best football I've seen from anyone this season, particularly with Guimaraes, his passing from deep, his ability to get the ball over the top but also through the lines. Newcastle play some really good football. However, having said that, let me just read the stat here. In the Premier League, 7 teams have either scored the same amount or more. So, whilst Newcastle are pretty good going forward, there are teams better than them. So, how are they fourth in the league? Well, quite simply, it comes down to the defensive unit. The defence is absolutely brilliant. The best defence in the Premier League statistically, the least goals conceded, the most clean sheets, and have only conceded 1 goal in the league since the World Cup. So that's now, for the second half of the video, what I want to focus on. Why are they so good defensively? So before we actually break it down from a tactical point of view, I just first want to give some credit to Eddie Howe. Now, Eddie Howe's always a manager I've been a fan of. However, a criticism of him at Bournemouth, and quite a big criticism of him, was that he couldn't adapt his team to be good enough defensively. Bournemouth played really good football under Eddie Howe, but particularly in that final season, he couldn't adjust to get a good defence. He couldn't get a solid defensive performance from his team. And I think Eddie Howe deserves a lot of credit for the fact that in his off time, when he weren't actually in management at the time after being sacked, I love the fact that he evolved himself as a manager. A lot of managers can be quite stubborn. He could have stuck to his principles, and to an extent he has from an attacking point of view. But he also evolved himself. He learned more about the game, and he really learned how to get his team to defend better. And of course, as a result, we've been seeing that. The back four, which is often this back four here, Burn, Botman, Schär and Trippier, they just don't concede goals. What is it? I think they've conceded 2 goals in the Premier League since the 6th of November. It's an absolute joke. It's mental. Yes, I know we had a World Cup in there, but it's still very, very impressive. And it starts with a good high press. And what we see is Callum Wilson curving his runs up here, forcing the goalkeeper one way. Now, the importance of curving a run is, like I said, it reduces the options for the goalkeeper. If Wilson stands here and charges at the keeper can play this way, or he can play this way. However, if Wilson starts here and then curves his run, it takes this passing option out of the equation, but because he's curved his run, he curves back in towards the keeper. So not only is he cutting off one passing option, he's also putting the keeper under pressure as well. This then means that the ball has to be played one way. This is where Newcastle then lock on, go man for man, and are very aggressive in their press. So we can see, of course, the fullbacks are going to be on the opposition wingers. Trippier and Burn are nice and tight there. Almiron and Willock are going to be between a centre-back and a fullback. However, importantly, they are very smart players defensively, Almiron and Willock. We see other teams use this sort of shape and it doesn't work quite as well with their wingers. Almiron and Willock are very energetic, very hard-working, Almiron in particular, but also their spacing is quite good. Which means that Almiron has the ability to affect the centre-back here once it's been forced one way, but also if the ball goes over and goes higher, he has the spacing but also the energy to get across and put pressure on the ball. And this is very much Newcastle's plan. They don't want you coming down the centre of the pitch because, you know, a Jesse Marsh principle from Leeds, the goal's in the middle of the pitch, let's play in the middle. Defensively, Newcastle of course want the opposite. They want the ball away from the middle. So what they will do, they will force the opposition to play the ball wide, and now this is where Newcastle really come into their element, and they squeeze the pitch and make it really difficult. And like I was saying right at the start of the video, the one metric where they rank really well is for pressing high and winning the ball back. Some of that comes from Wilson, some of that comes from Almiron, but it also comes from a massive team effort. And what they do is they let the ball go wide to the fullback here. Almiron will come on and put a pretty, I wouldn't say a passive press, but he's not really snapping into a tackle. However, what they then do here is they let the ball be rolled into the opposition winger's feet. And now this is the point where it is crunch time. Newcastle are like, alright, now this is our pressing trigger. Newcastle get one side of the pitch, they force the play all the way over one side, really condensing it, making the pitch as small as possible for the opposition. And basically, they suffocate the player on the ball. Trippier will come in here, Longstaff can come over, Almiron will get over, and basically, this player now has no option on the ball, hence being suffocated, which often results in a turnover in possession. What they also do really well in these areas, the fact that they force the opposition out wide, they then use the touchline as a defender. Now, to explain that, if I have the ball here, this player here, I have 360 degrees where realistically I might be able to turn and play. If you have the touchline, it's now 180 degrees. You've literally halved the options for the player on the ball. The touchline is the best defender in football because physically you can't beat it. You can't dribble past the touchline, it's not possible. So the touchline is the best defender. Newcastle use that really well. They force you one way and then get over, crunch the pitch, and like I said, suffocate the player on the ball. Now where's this guy meant to go? Nowhere really. Now this might result in an opposition throw-in or something like that, but Newcastle have done their job. They haven't let the ball been progressed through in the middle of the pitch, they're forced on one way, and like I said, really suffocated the position. If the opposition have found their way through the press, and you know, we do see it, the Premier League has a lot of quality, teams like Arsenal, Manchester City are good at playing through the press, we then see Newcastle drop off. Now importantly, they don't drop off into a low block, they don't drop back right into their own box and invite the pressure, they sit in what we would call a mid-block. So they've got a high defensive line in terms of the back line, but not a high pressing line. So Wilson has now dropped in, they're now very much a 4-5-1, rather than the 4-2-3-1 which we saw previously, and again, they're crowding the centre of the pitch. And again, it's the workmanlike nature of the team. Again, Almiron and Willock put a lot of energy and a lot of work rate on the wings. They really are key to this defensive system. But also Joel Linton and Longstaff are very combative in the middle. And then Guimaraes is also just a brilliant technical player, but also very hard-working. Good technically, defensively as well, which is important. And it's very difficult to play through this team. It's very difficult to play through the pitch. Now, the solution to that, if you're the opposition, is to go over the top. How do you bypass a kind of a tight structure? You go past it, over it. If you try that, Newcastle then have Nick Pope. Now, the Nick Pope signing was one that I was a little bit unsure about in the summer, I have to admit. I thought there were better modern-day goalkeepers, potentially keepers that are a bit better at playing with the ball at their feet. That was my genuine opinion. However, Nick Pope, to be honest, has proven me wrong. Now, what a lot of people are talking about is his saves, his clean sheets, which means he's the best keeper in the league. For me, I disagree with that, because a lack of shots faced or a high amount of clean sheets is a team thing, not just a goalkeeper thing. However, something which is a bit more goalkeeper based is the fact that he ranks first in the league for sweeping actions. This is where he's been very important. Because with Newcastle playing this high line, and Schär often goes nice and tight to a striker and Botman will cover him, but Botman, whilst being good, isn't blessed with pace. So there are opportunities for opposition teams to maybe run in behind Newcastle and a long ball come over the top, but that option's removed by Nick Pope and his brilliant sweeping actions behind the team. It's very proactive and it stops the move before it ever really happens. In certain game states, Newcastle are happy to drop even deeper when they're protecting a lead or under pressure or maybe down to 10 men. Trying to see out the game, Newcastle are now happy to drop into this deep shape, and again it's where this defence becomes so important. In players like Dan Burn and Botman, you've got a lot of height, but you've also got the spare centre-back, because you've got Schär and Botman at centre-back, but also Dan Burn, who's 6'7" at left-back, dropping into the box as well. It gives you a lot of height. Newcastle are very happy to be tight in these areas. Again, the workmanlike nature of the team. They throw their body on the line, they really block shots. They've got that Newcastle crowd behind them, and the atmosphere at St James's at the moment is absolutely brilliant. very, very difficult to play through this Newcastle team. All the stats tell us, in terms of clean sheets, in terms of goals conceded, they are the best team defensively. And for me, I do think they are. Their game management is good as well. They know how to do the dark arts a little bit, maybe a little bit of time wasting, which isn't easy on the eye, but it does get results, and I'm sure Newcastle fans love it. It's got Newcastle sitting 4th in the table with every possibility of finishing in the top 4 this season. It really is in their own hands. Hopefully for their sake they don't lose anything with injury. They of course also have the Carabao Cup final against Manchester United at Wembley, which is a chance for a trophy for the first time in a while. Eddie Howe is doing a brilliant job, and hopefully now you guys know why Newcastle are doing so well. But now it's time for you guys to let me know what you think in the comments down below. Who do you think is Newcastle's best player? What have you thought of Nick Pope in goal? Almiron's form dipping since the World Cup? What is the reason for that? All of that stuff, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the video, and I will of course see you guys in the next one.